So I have a couple big stories to talk about. I want to talk about a little bit about the debates, but first, um, the first thing here is from Pierre Poilievre, saying from another source, Canada is the biggest deficit in the G20, and this is something that's been talked about a lot here. Now, I mean, here's the graph. You can see it. Obviously, Canada's the biggest by a pretty wide margin. I mean, it's not massive, but it's a good probably 5, 6, 7% of GDP. Like Canada's at about 20. The next highest country is about 13, 14. So this is a big issue, and this is the thing. This is something I've been talking about a lot, but so many people just don't care. Like they don't care, or I think the bigger thing is that a lot of these people legitimately think that if we wouldn't have did all this stuff, then like we would be destroyed, or society would collapse. But the reality is that we never should have. I mean, looking back on it, we never should have locked down at all. But that's a hindsight's 2020 analysis. The reality is that if you look back, we should have reopened in like May. Like I was talking going into April, I think mid April, I was already starting to bring. I remember telling people that we should be reopening, or at the very least preparing to reopen. And then I directly remember saying multiple times in April that there's no reason we can't reopen by, early to mid-May. There's no reason. And most areas waited till June. I mean, Toronto never really fully reopened. I mean, they kind of did, but now a lot of these places are re-locked down. So people think that it's the virus that's causing this. No, it's the government shutdowns that are causing all of this. And this is a problem. This is going to be a very big problem in the future. And this is why I constantly harp on the average person out there, because the average person, I mean, the reality is that they're completely oblivious. Like they're completely oblivious in that running massive deficits, they really work good in the here and now, right? Because the government can give people the illusion that the economy is doing all right, um, even though it isn't, right? Like it would be the, comparison of, the average person losing their job or just quitting their job and living off, credit cards, lines of credit, second mortgage, all that kind of stuff. And it works really good off the start because you don't have to work and you're still living you still have a pretty good lifestyle. But in the long run, it's not going to work. And the reason why the government can drag it out so long is that the interest rates are low, but the interest rates are they're not going to be low forever, because I mean there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. But I mean the main thing being is that the more debt a country accumulates, the less likely a creditor is going to want to give them money, because the more debt you have, the less likely you're going to be to pay it off, especially when the economy is not growing. Because if the economy is growing, yeah, the revenue will increase, because again, if wages are going up or growth is going up, that's going to mean more tax revenue for the government, which means, yeah, they'll be able to pay off the debt easier. But we don't have that. We have the opposite of that. We have negative growth. We have massive unemployment. We have businesses shutting down left, right, and center. So people just don't seem to realize just how serious this could get. And their reasoning for it is, oh, we got to give people free money because if we don't, they're going to be homeless. Well, yeah, we could have. I mean, I don't think it would happen if you actually did it right. But do you want a? This is the example I always give. Do you want a little bit of suffering in the here and now, or do you want a lot of suffering down the road? Because one of those two things has to happen. One of those two, one, or maybe even both. But one of those two things has to happen. And the problem is that politicians have every incentive in the world to delay the suffering, because if the suffering happens under them, they'll get voted out. The problem is that when you ignore a problem, it just continues to fester and to fester and to fester. It's only going to get worse from here. And the biggest problem when it comes to Canada too is that we have a populace that's too ignorant to vote for a government that's going to stand up against this. And I don't even necessarily think that conservatives would be much better. I mean, I didn't even vote conservative last election, so you can't really play the bias card there. I mean, someone like Pierre Poilievre, I think, is genuinely has his heart in the right spot, but I don't think that people like Aaron O'Toole do. Andrew Scheer didn't. I mean, they were definitely better than Justin Trudeau, but I don't think that I don't think that they would have been much better. And I do think that they would have been a little better. The problem is that when you have a conservative government, the mainstream media basically their entire existence is trashing the conservatives. I mean, look at the mainstream media in the States, right? Like CNN and MSNBC could change their name to the We Bash Trump Network or the Anti-Trump News Network, and no one would bat an eye because that's basically what they do. So that's the big problem. Now, again, what are the solutions here? What are the solutions? Because I don't want to just point out problems. The solutions are we have to cut spending. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. We have to cut spending. And if that means a little bit of suffering in the here and now, so be it. If you are a individual and you are spending more money than you are making, the reality is that it is not crude and gutless, and you're not being an a-hole by telling that person, hey, you got to spend within your means. That's just the reality of the world. You can't continuously spend more money than you make. It's just basic math. So again, and how on the reverse side, how do we avoid massive, homelessness and unemployment and, people dying? Well, how you do it is that you got to figure out ways to create growth. And the Trudeau government is not going to do that. I mean, the best year under the Trudeau government, I think, was like 1.1, 1.2% growth. I mean, if you look at the states, they were averaging what, 3.5 under Trump, and I don't even think I think Trump could have did a better job. So again, it's not going to get better under the Trudeau government. It probably won't get. I mean, the Conservatives would do a little bit better than Justin Trudeau and the Liberals, but they wouldn't do enough either. So that is the reason Canada is, for lack of a better word, screwed. Like Canada is screwed in the line, and as good as the PPC and Wexit may sound, those aren't going to happen, and they're not going to happen because they're not popular enough. I mean, especially the Wexit movement. I think Wexit easily could happen. The problem is that the mainstream media in Canada, public schools, universities, one of their main goals, if not their main goal, is to promote leftist politics. That's pretty much, I mean, especially the mainstream media. That's basically their goal. So again, the solutions are cut spending. That's just a reality. We have to cut spending. Number two, the entirety of government's, or almost the entirety of government's focus right now should be how do we create growth? And how do you do that? Number one, you have to encourage investment from other countries, which is the exact opposite of what the Trudeau government is doing. By over-regulating, all you do is disincentivize foreign countries and foreign people from investing in Canada. Because if you can invest in a country with less regulations, in an industry with less regulations, that's where people are going to invest. Do you want to invest in an oil and gas company or an oil and gas project in Canada where you have a million regulations, or do you want to invest in one in Iraq where there's nothing, next to nothing, or the States where there's at least reasonable regulations? Even there, I think it's too much. Well, of course, you're going to go to the States or you're going to go to Iraq. So that means no money for Canada. What are some other things they can do? They need to deregulate. There's way too many regulations out there. It's way too hard to start a business. There is way too many rules and regulations that especially small business owners need to adhere to. Taxes, I mean, certain taxes should be cut. I don't think taxes can be cut a lot given the amount of debt we're in. In a perfect world, you would cut taxes, but I don't think you can do it too much realistically. But again, the main goal is we need to create jobs, and we can't. And by creating jobs, the liberals will always say, "Oh, we're creating jobs." Well, no, you're not. Their idea of creating jobs is to print a bunch of money and use it to create jobs. That's not job creation. Anybody can do that. I mean, if you had the ability to print money. Creating jobs is when a government gets out of the way and an individual starts a business and grows the business and hires people. That's creating jobs, right? The government if the government directly creates the job, it's not a created job because you're just taking money from one person and giving it to another. Robbing Peter to pay Paul isn't creating a job. So anyway, that's the first thing I wanted to bring up. Western Standard data shows 900 AHS employees making more than $132,924. And again, that would probably put you in the top 10% for sure. maybe even a little more. And I don't know what the exact number would be, but that, I mean, you're not wealthy, you're not filthy rich, but you're doing pretty good. And this is this is the reason why one of the main reasons why I don't take the left seriously when they complain about healthcare and public schools and not having enough funding. Because you have, I mean, another example too is I believe the U of, like, look up the amount of people the U of A has that makes more than $250,000. I remember someone sending me an article on that, and the number blew me away. I don't remember what it is off the top of my head, so I don't want to speculate, but look that up. The number blew, not to mention too, I think they had at least in the double digits amount of people making over $500,000. So again, if this is the thing I cannot stand about the left, is that they constantly complain about healthcare and public schools and university being too expensive, but yet on the flip side, they could care less when you have all these people that are making, I would say the average person here is making more money than they're worth. And the way that you know that teachers and college professors and these people that work in the healthcare industry make more money than they're actually worth, it's that they're vehemently against competition. At least the average person. There's always exceptions. I know there's conservative teachers. I know there's teachers that aren't crazy lefties. I understand that, but I'm just talking about the average one. The numbers are very clear. Public school teachers, university professors, people who work in the public sector overwhelmingly are on the left. So let's just get that out of the way before anyone brings that up. But again, the main thing to bring up here is, if you want to cut prices when it comes to universities and public schools and all this kind of stuff, then why aren't you complaining about these people that are making bloated salaries? Why aren't you complaining about that? Because until the left brings that up when they complain about public schools not having enough funding, and there's not enough funding for healthcare, and there's not enough funding for universities too expensive, until they complain about stuff like this, I'm not going to take them seriously, and I really don't care what they have to say. Because they constantly complain about this oil CEO makes $1 million a year, and that's so terrible. Well, here's the thing. If that oil CEO can save that company $2 million a year, he's worth $1 million a year because he's saving them more money than that. And here's the thing. I have no problem with a teacher making $100,000 a year, $200,000 a year, whatever it is. But if you have to point guns at people and force them to pay you that salary, I have a problem with that. If you can earn that money by people voluntarily giving you said money, I could care less about how much money you make. But that's the problem with the public sector, is that you're not paid based off how much you're worth. You're paid based off how much you can convince the populace that you're worth, right? So again, that's just something that really bothers me that I wanted to bring up. And again, getting into the debate here, this is from Political Polls. This is the poll I seen that had the most votes on it, so I would assume that it is. And it's not like it's from like Trump or someone who's clearly on the right, or Biden, someone who's, you know, a partisan in nature. And again, 283,000 votes. Trump exactly 2/3 of the vote, or almost exactly 2/3 of the vote. So again, the thing I would talk about is, I think Trump did a lot better than last time. Not a lot better. I would just say better. In that the only complaint about Trump, from the biggest complaint about Trump from the last debate, which I disagreed with mostly, was that, oh, he was interrupting, right? But he didn't do that last night. In fact, it was the moderator interrupted Trump quite a bit. Biden interrupted Trump a few times, at least. But it was largely the moderator was interrupting Trump. And I think Trump should have went harder on Biden. He should have went harder on the Hunter stuff. He should have went harder on that. He should have went a little harder on the fact that his foreign policy has been way better than the Obama administration and the Bush administration. He should have just nailed Biden harder. He should have been a little bit harder on the fact that Biden was one of the main guys at the forefront of the 94 crime bill. When it came to Biden, again, he lied about a bunch of stuff again. The big thing being fracking, or the oil industry, and that's Biden lied about it. He said he doesn't want to ban fracking, even though Trump tweeted out after, I don't know if it was him, it probably was a staffer, but nonetheless, he tweeted out on his Twitter account video of Joe Biden saying he wants to ban fracking. He literally tweeted out, it's literal video, him saying it clear as day. So again, Biden lied about that. Biden lied about the fact that he wasn't getting kickbacks from his son. He lied about a bunch of stuff. And this is the thing that really bothers me, in that I'm not a huge fan of Trump. Like, I'm really not a huge fan of Trump. To me, he's just good enough to vote for, like just barely good enough to vote for. But the thing that really bothers me, and the reason why I would vote for him, is that you can usually tell which ideas are best by the ones that a certain group of people are criticizing the most. And that these mainstream media establishment hacks, the ideas and the people that they're criticizing the most are usually the ones that are the best, right? Like, you can, if you told me a random person, person A is being criticized by this group, if I know who that group is, I can judge with a high degree of certainty how trustworthy that person is. And if you have the CNNs of the world and some of these establishment politicians, and that on both sides, like Trump has the Bushes and the Romneys of the world who don't like him. He also has the Bidens and the Obama's somewhat anti-establishment, but in large part he's establishment. The CNNs of the world. If you have the Bushes, the Romneys of the world, the CNNs, the establishment Democrats, the Pelosi's, the Feinsteins, if you have those people criticizing you, I don't care who it is, that person's, they're probably a good person. And like I say, probably, because there's probably some exceptions. Um, but nonetheless, the take home point of the debate was, I think Trump did all right. I think he should have been a little bit more heavy handed, a little more bombastic, I mean, for lack of a better word. But nonetheless, Biden wasn't quite as bad as I thought he would be. I knew for sure he would lie about those kind of stuff because he did it last time. But I was hoping for a major dementia moment. You could tell towards the end of the debate he was whatever. Again, you can tell that they have him hopped up on some kind of drugs, because the same thing happened last debate, and that as the debate went on, he started slurring his words a lot more, kind of putting, like he said, the poor boys, like stuff like that, where he says the exact opposite stuff. Like he says things that they don't make any sense. Now you understand what he's trying to get at, but they don't actually make any sense. Like he started to do that a ton. And the other thing that really bothered me was the moderator. I thought actually started out relatively well. They definitely started out relatively well, which I was surprised about. I thought it would be leading, and the when did you stop beating, or when did you start beating your wife, kind of loaded questions that they like to do with Trump. I thought that they would be doing that all night long, but they kind of waited to the end to start to do that. I'm happy they finally didn't bring up white supremacy, because I mean, they kind of did, but they've literally done that a million times, and I like that that's kind of starting to get old and that's starting to wear off. But the moderator clearly, as the debate went on, started to become more and more biased, and towards the end of it, it was like, my God, like you're so obviously biased, it's not even funny. So, yeah, I mean, the main point is Biden lied about a bunch of stuff. He lied about his son and his business dealings with them. He lied about the fracking part. He lied about Obamacare. Not people didn't lose their health care plans under Obamacare. Um, he lied about the whole 94 crime bill. And here's the other thing that I really can't stand about Biden and the left in general, is that on one hand, they vehemently criticize Trump for not doing as much on the whole virus situation, that you should have did more, right? But on the flip side, they criticize him. Oh, the economy's not doing good right now. There's a lot of unemployed people. Well, which one is it? Like, you have to pick a lane here. Either you need to be worried about the economy, or you need to be worried about the virus situation. Now, that doesn't mean you can't be a little bit worried about both. But if you want to have these stringent lockdowns, the economy is going to suffer massively. But like I say, this is the problem, is that they want to play both sides of the coin, right? Like, Biden has said directly that he would shut the country down if the quote unquote scientists told him to do that. And by what they mean by that is that if the scientists that agree with them already tell them to do something, they're going to do something, which is basically them saying, we're going to shut the country down. So again, if Biden gets elected, or if he was president right now, the economy would be suffering a heck of a lot more, a heck of a lot more.
And the other thing you lied about too is that the states that were hit the hardest are Republican, which isn't true. And most leftists don't even argue that. They know that the Democratic ones, on average, were the hardest hit ones. The argument that they usually come back with is, oh, the New Yorks of the world, they're higher population density, which doesn't make any sense, because if that's the case, then why weren't places like Tokyo and these some of these massively dense cities in the Asian countries, why weren't they hit incredibly hard, at least compared to New York? Well, they weren't. So the whole population density argument doesn't make any sense. So anyway, that's kind of my thoughts on the debate. I think I would give Trump, again, about a 7 out of 10. Honestly, I think Biden did worse than last time, because last time he didn't do that good, but he appeared to be good because people thought that Trump was being a bit of an a-hole. You can't make that argument this time around. And not to mention, this time around, I think Biden lied about even more stuff, right? Like, I think he lied about even more stuff. He still never condemned Antifa. He still never did that. So again, like I said, I would give Trump about a 7 out of 10. I would give Biden about a 2 out of 10. I think the only way Biden could have did worse is if he had a dementia moment, which he kind of did by constantly like slurring words and not making any sense, but he didn't have a big one. Like, he didn't forget where he was or forget his husband or his wife's name or something like that he's already done before. But nonetheless, like I said, I think Trump did all right, and I think Biden did pretty bad. So anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about today. If you liked the video, make sure you hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Again, people always ask, what can we do to wake people up, and the reality is that number one, you got to speak your mind, and number two, you got to support people that are speaking the truth. So make sure you hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already, and check out those links in the description as well.